the women of the Dáil and the women of the Seanad are shouting about this. They're shouting for a complete rethink around the narrative of miscarriage and a complete rethink for how we care for that. There's 14,000 women in Ireland experience miscarriage every year. 1 in 5 pregnancies ended in miscarriage. 1 in 10 women will experience it during their lifetime. This is a completely foreseeable event, and yet we don't provide for it in our employment law. We ask women to go out and work, and we don't provide for this completely foreseeable event to give them certainty that when this very sad event happens, often very sudden, very shocking, that they will have certainty in their employment. I think it's important to say that so many different employers provide a really compassionate response to this, and that they give space and time to women to be able to process this both physically and emotionally. Let's just set out the physical realities of this on the floor of the House on behalf of women who have experienced this. It's important that we simply acknowledge this. You know, it can take a number of days. It can take a medical process. It can take admission to hospital. It can take a surgical procedure. It can take a medically induced procedure. There is a physical trauma, and then there is an emotional trauma. And those things take time. And women who are often provided with compassionate leave by employers deserve the certainty to know that it will be there. There are multiple ways of doing this in legislation. There can be an amendment to Part 2 of the Parental Leave Act. I recognise the Labour Party have taken a different approach with the Organisation of Working Time Act, but there are lots of different ways of doing this. But the zeitgeist is changing around this now, and we need to see action. We need to see a response from government. We need to put the reality of women's lives onto the statute books and to protect them and give them certainty in relation to it. We also need to rethink the medical care and the medical narrative around this, but I might follow up with that and hand over to my colleague, Deputy Emer Higgins.
Thank you,
Minister. The advantage of having it on the statute book is a couple of different things. One, it recognises it as a practical thing that affects people and that a legislative response is appropriate. Second of all, the huge advantage of it is it simply means you can just call HR and invoke it, or your partner could do it on your behalf. So there's an automatic nature to it, there's a certainty to it, it's really important. You know, lots of us have had miscarriages. I've had a miscarriage. It can take a long time. You can see it on a screen one week that things are not going well, and it can be confirmed the following week. You need an admission to hospital. You know, these things can take time, and they're hugely emotionally draining. The Lancet journal this month actually has a brilliant editorial on how we think about miscarriage and how that narrative is reconceived. You know, they say, the Lancet, you know, for too long miscarriage has been minimised and often dismissed. That, you know, that this assumption that the combination of dealing with a private grief, misconceptions, guilt can lead to women putting so much more pressure on themselves than is necessary. I thank you for your response and invite me to help you with your research as somebody who's in the Dáil and has actually been through it.